Hi everyone, it's Erin, the Tarot Librarian, and thank you so much for joining me today. This is part 3 in our Tarot How-To series for beginning tarot readers. If you've missed the first 2 parts, you can find those on my channel. I will include links in the description. So today we're talking about tarot spreads, which is a very wide topic. But what I really want to focus on today is the why we want to use a spread as opposed to just pulling cards. When we're beginning with tarot, just pulling cards and not using a spread can present some real challenges. It can also present challenges to your querent. The spread provides a framework for your story as you tell it. And just like you read a book in a particular order, you're going to tell the story in a particular way. And the spread is what's going to define that. But there's three pieces of this discussion that I want to talk about here. So the first piece is the spread itself. So the spread is the framework through which the cards will be interpreted. So for example, you may do a 3-card spread, and that may have different positions within it. Positions are another element that I want to talk about, because in a spread, there are cards in particular places or positions, and they have particular meanings based on that position. So for example, if I use a past, present, future spread, then I'm going to have cards that represent past, present, and future. So if it's a 3-card spread, I may have 1 card is past, 1 card is present, 1 card is future, but there are other past, present, future spreads that are more than 3 cards. The other aspect is relationship between the cards in particular positions. So for example, if we take a past, present, future spread, there's a relationship between all 3 of them, but when we read them, we tend to read them in terms of past and present, and then present and future, because we do tend to think of things in terms of relationships just in general. And when you're reading, those relationships become very important. Part of how we interpret a card is not just based on the spread and the position, but it's also based on the relationship between that card and other cards in the spread. It's not too detailed for example, a 3-card reading, but when you start getting into more complicated spreads, you'll become more aware of how important those relationships between positions in a spread matter in terms of telling the story. So let's talk a little bit about different kinds of spreads. Well, there are all different kinds of spreads. Readers make up their own spreads all the time. When you're first starting out, you certainly can do that. If you're going to create your own spread, I do recommend that you practice it frequently so that you become more comfortable with where the cards are placed, but also more importantly, how you're going to interpret those cards within the spread. I do recommend for new readers that they start out with very simple spreads. There's certainly nothing wrong with using spreads that others have created, but in order to master those storytelling skills, it's much easier to start small and then build your skill level and your confidence level as you practice more and more. So I prefer very simple spreads for myself in terms of my day-to-day. Some readers like to pull a card a day. Some people like to do full spreads each day. One of my favorite spreads, and it is the spread that I first learned to read tarot with, is called the Celtic Cross. And it consists of 10 cards. And it covers a lot of the querent's experience in a very small amount of cards, because relatively speaking, 10 cards is not a lot of cards. And the key 6, which are the cards that make up the cross, are really where the crux of the reading takes place. So that may be one that you might want to consider. There are lots and lots of versions of that on the internet. They're all relatively the same, but some of the card positions have different meanings, and so you can pick one that is most comfortable for you. What I'm going to do is share with you today how I present the Celtic cross spread, and then you can make your own decisions as to how you want to do that yourself if you choose to use that spread. So today I am using my Cats Rule the Earth deck. I have lots of decks, of course, but this deck is a very, very special deck. I bought this on a vacation. That was really important to me, and so it has that special significance, plus I just love cats. So if I'm going to take the deck and put it into and use a Celtic cross spread, how I want to do that is as follows. Now, I'm not going to be using reversals. If you watch my previous video, you'll understand why I'm not using reversals. You certainly can do that if you wish to. So it's going to be a little tricky for me to show all the cards in the spread here. I will do my very best. So this card here, this card in the middle represents the foundation of the matter, the heart of the issue. Why is the querent coming to me to ask this question today? Now the card that crosses it, literally crosses it. This is the card in the second position. This represents a challenge. So this could be something that is working for you or against you in the situation. I'm not going to get into interpreting today, may do that another day, but for now we'll just focus on the spread itself and the different positions and then some of the relationships between the cards. So there's a clear relationship between the card number 1 and card number 2. This is the heart of the issue, and this is the challenge or the energy that's either helping or hurting the situation. Next, we have at the bottom, we have card number 3, and that represents sort of the root cause. What's going on in this situation? Where are we right now, or what has happened to get us to this point? So it's a foundational card, which is why we find it under the other 2 cards. So when I pull the card, the 4th card, I have a card that is just behind me, right? So below me, behind me. This is card number 4. So this is a receding influence, right? This might be something that maybe just happened or something that is more recent in nature. The card above is what crowns me, and that is the goal. So that is what needs to be understood. So that can be what I'm hoping for, or it can also represent what I need to understand or know about this situation as I move forward. The card in front of me is going to represent the future or approaching influence. So some people interpret this differently. You could certainly interpret it as a future card, but it can also represent a focus for you moving forward, right? So something that you need to be aware of, or something that, perhaps requires some of your attention as you move forward. But it can also represent an actual future influence. Again, I always like to say nothing is set in stone. And the goal here is to tell a story that's helpful to someone. And so they can take what works for them and leave the rest. Everything is subject to change. Now, this is the cross, right? So we talked about the Celtic cross. This is the actual cross. The next 3 cards are going to be the cards that sort of put the querent in the situation, whether that's you or someone else. So we have our 6 cards, our 6th card being the card that's in front of us. Now we're going to do a row up the side on the right. So the first card is our card number 7, which represents our self-concept. So how we see ourselves in this situation, what role we feel we play in this situation. The 8th card represents our environment. So this can represent how we're interacting with our environment, or it can represent how our environment is affecting us regarding this issue. Card number 9 represents our hopes and our fears. And a lot of times they're very closely linked, right? What we are hoping for is the opposite of what we're afraid will happen. These three cards are really meant to put the querent in the situation. They're not to divulge past or future necessarily, but the final card is the outcome card. And this card is a summary of all of the other cards in the deck. So this is a good spread to work your way up to if you're just beginning to read tarot. Now that we know the positions, I'm going to share with you some of the relationships between the cards. So we already talked about card 1 and 2 having that connection, right? The foundation, the heart of the issue, and then what the challenge is, the energy that's helping or hurting. Our 2 past cards, the card that's below us and behind us, are also connected as well. And so we do tend to read them together as we're telling the story. The card that crowns us and the card that's in front of us also have a relationship, a specific relationship, because we move from the top card to the right. Now, all the cards actually have a relationship with each other, of course, but it is important for me to point out some of the distinct relationships in the Celtic Cross that I have found, so just based on my personal experience. The cards on the right, I wouldn't say have a specific relationship. The first 3 that we've put down, so this would be the 7th, the 8th, and the 9th card. I think the connection to make there is that these are all cards that are based on the personal experience of the querent and the querent's environment and how that environment may be affecting them. But the 10th card, of course, has a relationship to all of the cards, but specifically it has a relationship to the 5th and the 6th card. And so the challenge with the 10th card is you're looking at this card and you're interpreting this card in light of every other card that you've pulled, and that can take some practice. Ultimately, the outcome card represents sort of the summation of what is meant to be learned from this situation. It can reveal future influences, but I do tend to read it as sort of an overall summary of pulling the story together, right? Taking all the elements of the story and handing them to the querent in a way that is helpful and easy for the querent to understand. So this is how I interpret the Celtic Cross. There are different interpretations out there. They're very similar. You're not going to see a whole lot of significant differences. It's a very comprehensive reading for 10 cards, which is why I really enjoy using this spread. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments. I'm happy to answer as many as I can. I do offer a course, a tarot boot camp, and I'm hoping to offer that again soon. And so that course is free right now on Zoom. So it is virtual. You do not need a deck of cards to participate in that course. So I will have more information on that as I get closer to selecting a date. It will likely take place during the day on a weekend or in the evening on a weekday. Those tend to be the best times for people in terms of availability. So again, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I wish you all the best.